On to our top story today. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says that the passing of the Rwanda bill is not just a step forward, but a fundamental change in the global equation on migration.
Whatever that means, the policy should be given royal assent, as Nick said, over the next few days. And the PM says that this should mean that flights will take off within 10 to 12 weeks. The Home Secretary, though, James Cleverly, says it's a landmark moment to stop the boats.
The Act will prevent people abusing the law by using false human rights claims to block removals. And it makes clear that the UK Parliament is sovereign, giving government the power to reject interim blocking measures imposed by European courts. I promised to do what was necessary to clear the path for the first flight. That's what we have done.
That was James Cleverly. We have TalkTV's political correspondent, the amazing Alicia Fitzgerald, is back here with us. Also joined by political commentator Benedict Spence, who's delighted to celebrate St George's Day by wearing a Scottish tartan jacket. What's that all about?
I like to be difficult.
Yeah.
I like, it's been a difficult Parliament. We're coming to the end of it now, and I'm going to go out much as Rishi Sunak is going to go out in a really difficult
with
time.
a bang. Yeah. We all know that feeling. Alicia, can we just put this into layperson's terms? What last night means? Because we've heard and spoken incessantly about Rwanda. Overnight, we heard that not only have the Rwandans got rid of the accommodation, there's a survey this morning that says Rwanda's safer than the United Kingdom. Jack Elson reporting that from The Sun. Just everything. Planes maybe not for another 3 months. And my favourite thing is that apparently in order to get any of these people, they have to put them in a detention centre first. But trying to get them to come to that detention centre before they can deport them is difficult because the authorities don't know where they are.
Well, there you go. Summed that up really quite well. So yesterday what happened is it was the final stage of that emergency legislation, which didn't really seem that emergency whatsoever, considering it's been back and forth between the House of Lords and the House of Commons for a few weeks now. And this was basically just to try and go against the ruling of the Supreme Court that Rwanda was unsafe and that we couldn't send migrants there. The government really tried to subvert that and say that actually, no, Rwanda is a safe country. And they really just wanted to get this scheme off the ground. Pardon the pun, not off the ground.
Brilliant, well done, yes. You fly
that was
with
really
that.
not on purpose.
Just keep flying.
So yesterday, what we saw was Rishi Sunak put his foot down effectively and say that the House of Commons will sit for as long as it takes into the night for this bill to pass, and that's exactly what they did. Basically, when it all comes down to it, the Prime Minister does have the power and the precedent to be able to kind of say to the House of Lords that what they want should be the priority. So what happened there was that they managed to put this bill through. So it means that this will now become law. The only things that could happen is the courts could still try and block them. But
the European courts.
But Rishi Sunak has said that if that does happen, he's not afraid to actually leave those treaties and those conventions.
Well, the
ECHR.
To try
and subvert that.
Benedict, his language around the Rwanda plan seems to have changed a little bit. He was talking last night about the global equation on migration. He's trying to kind of sell it now, not just as a UK issue, but as a global issue, as if the kind of Rwanda policy could be setting a precedent for other countries to follow.
Because it could. A lot of other countries are very interested to know how this is going to go because we are not the only one that is dealing with large swathes of migrants coming and us not necessarily believing that we have the capacity for them or them coming illegally. Plenty of other European countries have as well. But this is as much, I think, about pushing back against other countries that it's in their interests for this sort of legislation not to work. I mean, if you think about this, Rwanda was deemed unsafe by the United Nations. Who makes up the United Nations? It's not all first world countries. The majority of countries actually are places where they are net exporters of people. They want people to migrate to better countries, richer countries, because remittances are an important part of a lot of those economies. So if you are, say, India or somewhere like that, it's not in your interests for there to be a precedent whereby if your citizens aren't deported straight back to you, they can still be deported somewhere else and you're going to have to deal with them at some point. So obviously, the United Nations is going to turn around and go, this country doesn't meet the criteria of a Western country, not that any of us do, but therefore you can't send people to them. Having got over that hump, that's a very important step, not just for the UK, but for a lot of other European countries who are desperately trying to find ways of stemming the tide and returning people. Not that they can, because actually a lot of people who come are meeting the legal criteria. As we know in this country, the Conservative Party on its watch has made it a lot easier for people to come legally. But there does need to be a
Somebody said to
sign.
me this morning that 80% of the people that come to this country are refugees. Is that right?
No.
Well, over the past...
Definitely not.
That's what was said to me. John McTiernan said 80% of the people will end up
it's
as...
about 70 to 80% of the records that I think they predate this year.
Is this people who come over the channel or who come in total?
Over the channel, I believe.
OK, part of the problem with that is the Home Office prioritises people who are likely to be approved. So women and children and people who are very clearly from war zones, they get their applications seen to first because it's a way of saying, well, we're processing the applications faster. Because obviously the average woman or child who's come from Sudan is a refugee. You want to get them into safe accommodation as soon as you can. That's the humane thing to do. So actually, yes, if you have this massive backlog, and that's what we've been talking about for a very long time, of tens of thousands of people who haven't been processed, and you can say, oh, but 80% of all of these people are going to be approved. Well, that's not true.
I said earlier, though, we've got to move any of these people, they've got to be in detention centres to be taken by the authorities. How does that work?
This is a great swathe of the problem. This is why I don't think that Rwanda is necessarily going to work. You know, Yvette Cooper referred to it as an expensive gimmick, and it is, but that's because the alternative is more expensive. Actually, what do we want to do? We want to make sure that people are in secure locations where they are safe, but they also can't abscond and you know where they are. That means building dedicated detention centres, facilities, not putting them in hotels. That's very expensive. Politically, it's very unpopular in whatever constituency you want to do that in. And then we get to the question of deporting people. The Indian government, you know, the Albanian government, they're not going to deny access to their own citizens if a UK plane enters their airspace. They are under legal obligations to let them back into their own country. So you could do that. But again, it's incredibly expensive and time-consuming to do. And that, I think, is the main thing. The government doesn't want to look mean and nasty, so it doesn't want to be the party that sets up detention centres and has special military planes to send people back, even though that's a fairly standard thing that a lot of other countries do.
I think they might stand a better chance in the election if they did that.
And it doesn't want to spend the money because it's a lot more expensive to do that. This gimmick, and it is a gimmick, costs them a lot less than building special facilities.
But it's not answering the problem.
Of course it's not.
Do you really think that this government, don't want to look cruel?
Yes, I think...
Isn't that the deterrent aspect, though? And what they've done has shown to be... It has been criticised for being cruel. We're talking about people who've painted over murals in children's centres.
I think
because they want it to look imposing.
This is what they consider an acceptable level of firmness and nastiness.
Here's a question for you. We can go around in circles. Genuine question, without anybody poo-pooing me. Do you think if the Tory government had a bigger pair and when we are actually going to do this, it doesn't matter if it sounds cruel. I'll tell you any money, their polling will go... It's not as strong as it could be. That's what he's just saying. It's as much as they feel they could do. What if they flipped the coin and went, do you know what, we're doing this right now, people aren't going to mean that we're stopping that.
But it's people within their own party that are blocking it as well.
No, but I'm just saying, how do you think that would play with the electorate? I'm really interested, because I think people are hacked off with it. I do.
Set against the current situation, if the government were to turn around and say, we're building, 4 detention centres, we're buying 20 planes, and this is going to be what's happening. A lot of people, I still think, wouldn't trust them to do it, but I think there would be a respect for them actually doing something rather than, as you say, actually, Nicola, it's that sort of that gimmick kind of, we're going to look like we're tough, we're going to look like but it's only 200 people. It's not really being tough. It's sounding like we're the nasty party, but not really following through.
But 500 is nothing, is it, Alicia? I mean, it's no number, is
Alicia,
it?
just to expand on what Yvette Cooper said, Benedict said there that she'd called it an expensive gimmick. She also said instead of spending £2 million per asylum seeker on this scheme, they should be putting that money into boosting our border security instead, and that is Labour's practical plan. Lots of people criticising Labour, saying they don't have a plan. They argue that they do.
They definitely argue that they do, but I think what the Conservatives are trying to do with this scheme, and, you know, you can call it a gimmick, you can say it's not going to work, both of which I think most people probably agree with, but what the Conservatives are trying to do is say that they have actually tried to legislate, and they've got so far into making a kind of deterrent. That's what they're trying to pitch it as. They're trying to say, we've actually tried. The Labour Party is saying that they've got these ideas. They're saying they want to tackle the criminal gangs. They're saying they want to process overseas and all these things. But if the Conservatives can say we got 2 flights off to Rwanda and then the Labour Party were in government and they cancelled this scheme, the Conservatives have an easy attack line in saying, well, look, we got so far, we tried. Some migrants went. If we'd still been in power, we could have seen loads more of this.
I read a really interesting interesting article yesterday. Both of you, very quickly, I know, but I just want to see what you think. So this article said, if the Labour Party genuinely disagrees with Rwanda and it's about politics, why did they vote against it? Why didn't they let it through and the government fall on their backside? They said, this article, I don't know what paper it was in, actually maybe the Labour Party are concerned that this could not provide a boost. The government's gone, but you know what I mean? prove to actually a few people that we can do something about this. I'm not a fan of Rwanda, but it's become a political game, hasn't it?
It has, and I
That's
think
the frightening thing.
I think that there's been a lot of sort of political chicanery, as you say. It's about trying to make one party look bad, make the other one look like they're weak, and I think that to a degree, under the current sort of circumstances, the Labour Party could never back this, because as Alicia says, most people don't believe it's going to work. That's the key thing. So the Labour Party could sit there and say, well, it's a deterrent, they're doing something that we don't want to do. But that's more the key thing. They don't want to be lumped with a policy that doesn't work, that then they potentially have to get tougher on because it doesn't work. They'd rather not have that football in the first place.
And you can't vote for a scheme that you then end up criticising, so they'd tie themselves in a knot there, wouldn't they?
Listen, I actually don't make this political. I think the whole thing's... it's so much in our country. It needs people to sit down across party and sort of... This problem's not going to go away, and it's genuinely a massive problem for people. I think it's been made hugely political. It's been made bipartisan by its very nature. I don't think, personally, that this was ever a plan to stop the boats. I think it was a plan to get into government for a further 5 years. I think that when it was first... proposed. I mean, it was Priti Patel, wasn't it?
It was Priti Patel, and I think we need to remember she existed to be Boris Johnson's human flak jacket.
Yes.
It was a different government that thought this up, realistically.
But then my criticism would be very obvious. When he stalked up Downing Street, for all the people who say, poor Sunak, you inherited, he could have said, I don't agree with that, and been honest with the people and said, it'll take me time to come up with an alternative.
He didn't agree
I'm
with
not
the Rwanda
going
policy.
to defend something I don't agree with. He wanted the job, he took on everything, and it's bitten him on the backside. I don't have sympathy for Sunak in that response. Not at all.
Neither do I.
Well, I don't like the jacket. I'm joking. I love the jacket.
What a way to go out.
I love
Can you do
it.
your Scots accent for me?
Which one?
Right. Thank you very much indeed, Benedict.
Thanks very
Benedict McSpence and Alicia Fitzgerald.
Ta-da, then.